Hello guys, my name is Martin Curry from Belief Media. I'm here with my business partner Domenico Bordiel. How are you, Dom?
Great, thank you.
Except you're very tired. Even your eyes are glazing over
eyes
right
already,
now.
can you?
Yeah. It's been a long day, guys. The purpose of today's video is to introduce our Platinum program. Bottom line, our Platinum program is one that introduces a minimum of $120 million of additional volume to your business. So we look over the last calendar 12 months, and we guarantee $120 million of additional volume. On top of that, how do we do it? It's a range of internal programs, most of which are made available via our digital marketing and social media system to general subscribers of our program and platform. Except for the fact that we have a staff member internally assigned full-time to basically run all the programs on your behalf. They craft and create custom content for your website. They run all your social media in a dedicated way. That is, they run a sterile ship essentially. They're disconnected from virtually everything else we're doing for other brokers. So there's no overlap in content whatsoever. Everything they do for you is 100% original. They run your processing. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, your post-settlement programs and follow-up and document collection. So they supplement one of our beta programs, which is a file invite service. So they're on top of that with real-world phone calls and so on. Generating volume is very, very easy for us. And it's how we're able to provide this service. Now, it is not advertised. Why are we making this video? Because we get asked about it now all the time. A lot of people are becoming aware of it. How do you gain access? Well, you really don't. It's very much invitation only. At this stage, we're looking at taking only one broker on in April, possibly, and then maybe two in May. And then we reevaluate our position because we do have to assign a full-time staff member essentially to that broker. The way the program runs, we will run through the basics of it because it is necessary. And we want you to keep in mind as well that the Platinum program is, there are 3 tiers of essentially access to our programs and systems and everything else. And most people, 95% of people, 98% of people even will gravitate towards the digital media and social media platform that provides all the tools necessary to achieve success. They're the same tools we provide to the Platinum guys. The exception or the difference is we're doing it on our end on their behalf.
We're ensuring the best practices are followed and that the tools are used to their maximum efficiency, and as well as the advanced features are utilised.
Yeah, look, we've always said there is very much a blueprint to run a mortgage broker business. It's like a McDonald's franchise. You know, you can replicate success over and over and over. Again, it's very, very easy to do, and we've done it longer than probably anyone else in the industry. I'd like to know if there's anyone that's been working with the digital industry and the finance industry longer than 1997. I'd certainly like to hear about it. And in that time, we've managed to build up a set of SOPs and systems and protocols and procedures and whatnot that guarantee a measure of success. Here's the thing. Our former growth program, which was retired formally last year, we took on a couple of people this year. Actually, we took on one person in December, wasn't it? This is Odessa. Odessa is the only person that knows who she is, so I can say that name. We run strict confidentiality here. We don't disclose one client to another. That will change. We're in the process of changing that. But saying a name won't mean anything because...
We had the discussion in December, but it was close to Christmas, so the program actually begun in January.
But the growth program itself, I would say it was actually formally shut down well and truly in March last year. March of 2020. It was an enormous success. It was well and truly just the most powerful and amazing, digital success program in the country. And it was affordably priced, more than what we charge now, mind you. But we walked people through the process of implementing all these digital programs, essentially hand-holding them. The problem with that, and it's why we're now moving back to upping our game with the Platinum program. The problem with that is brokers would not always do what was asked of them, and we're in no way to say you have to do this, you have to do that. And to us get stuffed.
It is their business at the end of the day.
It is, of course it is.
So it's really up to them how much involvement they want to put into the program. But again, you also got the outside of that. If they don't put the effort into the program, we can't really guarantee any results out the other end. We can throw the leads we like at it, but if they sit and don't get followed up, they just get wasted.
There were that program was broken up into day 1 to day 90. Now, I am tired. On almost every occasion, the program would go off the rails at some point. In terms of, not in a bad way, that is, people wanted to go in different directions. They wanted to concentrate on one program over another. They were more interested in the organic traffic that they saw coming to their business and did not assign a single cent to paid promotion, Facebook marketing and things like that, which is something I used to always tell brokers. One of the brokers we're going to do a podcast with in the next few days, in fact, this is D, who's doing some of our property stuff. He's been working closely with us for probably a year and a half, and he came to us for paid promotion, for Facebook paid promotion. And I will discuss this with him in the podcast because it's an interesting story. And the reason I want to talk to him is not because he's the highest performing broker that we've got, because he's far from it. He works very, very hard, but the nature of the loans he's writing is probably a little lower volume than most. He's got a lot of relationships and whatnot in place that we've put in place for him that generate up to 100, 120 organic, ready to buy leads every single month. So on the basis of that, like I know he did 2 loans just yesterday. He did 3 last week. That's a lot for a lot of brokers. That's a lot. They might do 1 or 2 a month. He did 5 in 12 days or something. So, but what separates him, I guess, is he came to me and he said, look, I need to do this Facebook marketing. He said, I've just come off this BS mastery thing. He was one of those guys and said, it's just garbage. I didn't understand it. And it was, ridiculous anyhow. And I said, look, of course, you've been ripped off. Now let's go through things. And I spoke to him on day 1. And on day 1, I always place an expectation upon brokers by way of a video. I said, record a video. We're not going to use it for anything. All I want to do is understand your video presence and get a feel for what you look like on camera and so on. There are a whole bunch of reasons for it. The top reason, or one of the top reasons, is I just wanted to see if they would do it. I needed to know the commitment level. And when this guy, D, I'll call him D, when D started on day 2, he went out and recorded this thing with a builder that went for 30 minutes. And on day 4, he went out and did another one with an accountant. He did all these amazing videos. And I sat there and watched these and I was fascinated. They weren't the most professional thing in the world, but they don't need to be, because that's what we advocate, that brokers create videos however they can in any manner. And he sort of blew me away with that. And then I got his database, which was over 1,000 people. And that's a lot for a broker. There are a lot of brokers out there with no more, who have been in the industry for 5 years, but have got no more than 300 people on their books. This is loans they've written, not just contacts and dead prospects, basically. And these were genuine opportunities, actual conversions. There are over 1,000. And we said, look, we're going to run our Jupiter program, which is a dedicated program for database clearing. And I did it myself initially. I said, I'm going to start it. I want to see how this is going to pan out, because I need to get an appreciation of how brokers are perceived by their clients. And one of the things we used to do was an NPS survey very early on. We don't do that now as a telephone survey. We did a few years ago. We do that as an email response now. So it's just an email with, you click on a link. How would you rate this broker? Or how likely would you be to recommend this broker to friends, family and co-workers on a scale of 1 to 10? And people just click on a specific link there. Details are in the Finance Marketing Guide on the NPS survey, by the way, and how it's used and why it's used and so on. But we used to use that as a means to connect with colder prospects within your database. Anyway, I kind of ran this as a quasi-Jupiter program with a leaning towards the MPS. And out of the first 10 phone calls, I picked up 3 conversions. I think there were like 4 or 5 phone calls. And I stopped there and called up there and said, mate, these are people you haven't spoken to in 10 to 15 years, some of them. 10 to 12 years, I think, was about the most. I said, let's just scrap everything. Let's just clear this database, because I'm confident that it could return maybe 50 mil in volume. So I don't know, because I don't know what the longer people. One of 2 things happens when people are on a database for a long time, or one of 3 things really. So people can pay off their properties, retire and so on. They can mature into investment properties, or they can move to another broker, which is the third thing I was talking about. They can vacate your experience. They can just go elsewhere. If you don't protect your pot of gold, somebody will steal it from you. And that happened with this guy in a significant way, not because he was bad, because people loved him. They all wanted to know how he was doing and everything else. That's one thing that was very consistent throughout those calls that I made, and certainly when Paul was here running the Jupiter program that I'll discuss in a moment, it was one of those things that was really, really clear, and that is people loved him. So I sat back and said, why are these people not coming back to him? It's just because people don't have loyalty to their mortgage broker. They're generally not loyal unless they're put in a loyalty program. That's a post-settlement program. So a post-settlement program which is underpinned, I guess, in our sense by Edge, but there are other programs they've put in place to ensure we mature those people within our database and keep in contact with them regularly. That is absolutely vital. I cannot impress upon you the importance of maintaining real-world telephone contact with all of those people that you help through the experience. And there are so many reasons for that. So many reasons. You can infiltrate, or you can become so invested in or someone can become so attached to you as a broker that you almost infiltrate their family. You write their sister's loan and their brother-in-law's loan and their dog's loan and uncle's loan and their goldfish's loan. Every you end up writing everyone's loan, and all of a sudden you're nested into that tribe, that cult. You become part of that collective. You're no longer the mortgage broker, you're the family mortgage broker, like the family lawyer, the family doctor, the family dentist, everything else. And once you infiltrate a specific group in that way, you can achieve amazing things. I got a little bit off track, but that's important, because the nature of the database lends itself to relationships. If you don't maintain a relationship with your database, it will disintegrate. Anyway, I said to Dee, mate, I'm going to get someone in. I said, just don't pay me a cent for a while. I said, at least a couple of months. I'm going to get someone in because we need to run your program formally. I need someone on this full time. And that's when Paul came into the business. And Paul's exceptional. He's MBA qualified. He was a lecturer at University of UTS, which is in Sydney, a Haymarket campus. He's had his own businesses for a number of years. He was really good. He has an amazing voice. He did radio work and TV voiceover work and things like that. He's really good. So when he spoke to people, they certainly listened to him. It sounded like they were talking to it wasn't like a broken Indian accent, which is what happens 99% of the time as brokers offshore their work, and it just doesn't work, which is a whole other issue. And Dee ended up doing a good deal of volume, like a huge amount of volume. 12 months later, we ran the program all over again in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. It wasn't as successful, but it also wasn't there to convert clients. It really was a welfare check, and that was run by Gabriella.
The goal was very different on that one there compared to the previous one. So,
the brief, the objective was diametrically opposed. It wasn't, let's get these people, let's reignite this flame and fire and get this database burning. It was, let's stroke this database a little, just massage it a little bit, and make sure people are happy, make sure they're not in financial distress. And if they need someone to talk to for any reason, not necessarily financial, they've got someone there that can help them.
And there were a few people that actually didn't even know that there was potential help during that time and options that they had. So it did help a few people.
There were people in tears. You know, Gabriella ran that program, very soft-spoken, very pleasant young girl, obviously a very Australian accent. We never offshore anything for any reason. That includes the processing of loans. Never, ever offshore a single damn thing, right? There's 100 reasons for that, guys. I'm going to make a video on it because the fraud aspect aside, I've got a history in law enforcement and intelligence-related work. I worked in various police forces and things like that, and I worked for a short amount of time in fraud, and mortgage fraud was always at the top of the list, you know, and fraud relating to the stock market and such. If you knew that your client was 100 times more likely to be defrauded in some way in the 12 months after their loan settled on the basis of sending your processing offshore, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, India, for crying out loud, the crime fraud capital of the world, if you knew that your client was 100 times more likely to be defrauded, would you still send that application offshore? Because you want to save $100? No, of course not.
And many people don't realise just how dangerous and wrought with holes and security flaws it is sending someone offshores. So that's why it's worth doing a video on it. Yeah, it's worth doing a video on it to cover it in total. Yeah.
There's some specific cases I worked on when I was working in the detective's office, and it's I was always assigned the mortgage-related cases because people understood. That was I didn't know much about it, to be honest, at the time, because we'd worked in the marketing industry supporting financial clients, but at that point I had only had my brokerage for 18 months. I didn't know anything really, but it was something that stuck to me, unfortunately, so I tended to pick up those cases, and I did enjoy them. But it is important to realise that the offshore stuff is just, and people still advocate for that. I still hear these coaches, talking about processing services and there are a number of brilliant processing services. If you have to have your stuff processed by a third party, there are a number of exceptional people in Australia that abide by the Privacy Act 88. They understand the Corporations Act and all the expectations placed upon them by an array of legislation. They understand that, so they're very compliant in that respect. So in a post-Royal Commission world, sending stuff offshore is just stupid. Anyway, so we process this, obviously. We run all our programs internally in this office under my supervision, and Gabriella was just absolutely brilliant in this second coronavirus program for D. So he's run it a couple of times. Now, on the basis of a couple of things he did there, certainly his early efforts with video and everything else, we put him onto a couple of our property clients, which is part of what we normally do for platinum clients. We set up relationships. We broker essentially the relationship between one of our financial advisor clients, one of our, or two or three or four of our accountant clients, and three of our real estate clients, and pair them up with a single broker. And it's why it's so easy for us to generate that volume, because we've got this pool of resources that can feed these leads through on tap. I don't like that term, on tap, but it is just this constant flow of very high value. The number of people that are delivered to you, the type of people that deliver to you are ready to go. And normally delivered with the paperwork, the necessary paperwork.
And they're seeking someone to come through and process the loans and do the right thing by the clients in a very timely manner. Yeah. So they're actually hungry to find the right sort of person to work with, which makes that relationship very, very strong.
Yeah. Absolutely, mate. The relationship becomes rock solid. We discussed in one of the last videos we did somewhere about setting up dedicated telco lines. Running. We've got the partner dashboard.com.au for selected sales tracker clients. That's in a closed beta, which is discussed in the Finance Marketing Guide. Not a great deal of depth because we don't give it to everyone just yet. There will be a time in the next few months where that's released to Mercury, Podium, and Sales Tracker guys who have access to it now. But certainly, I know I had a point for bringing D up and that.
The involvement, he put the effort in for the videos at the start. He fully became involved in the program. He wasn't afraid to do all the steps that were required, and he kept asking questions and wanting to do more.
Yeah.
He didn't just sit back and assume that everyone else was going to do the work.
That's right. And he's looking at doing some really brilliant volumes this year. I think the business volume in the last 18 months has only increased by about 500%, which might seem like a lot. And I guess it is a lot. He's evolved to that point where he's looking at putting on staff and everything else. But the thing with him is we still have to implement sort of higher end, business management tools. We still need to formalize, I guess, that Edge post-settlement system and so on. So we need to involve ourselves with him at a platinum level, rather than placing the expectation entirely back on the broker and saying, this is what you need to do, go out and do it, which is what we would expect from somebody that was a subscriber to the digital marketing social media platform. So a Yabba client, a standard subscriber, they can call us to their heart's content on the telephone and ask us questions, but they won't. We're not going to hook them up with one of our real estate guys, but we're going to show them exactly how they can go out and do it. So the Platinum program, to get back onto that, is we have to be cautious about who we involve in that program as well. And we have been so silent with a lot of our brokers on the Platinum program. Some of them are aware of it. I'm mumbling now. Some of them are aware of it. So they do ask us from time to time, and we have to say that we're not running it. But the truth is, a lot of the time we are running it, but we can't allow them into the program because we know that they don't have the capacity or the business agility maybe to run it on their end to our satisfaction, because we still place an expectation upon brokers. If you're going to, we basically return 120 mil to your business. It's very easy for us, but the broker is still the biological lump that has to talk to the client and convert the deal. And if they're out in the golf course 3 or 4 days a week and they're not taking their phone calls and they're missing appointments and so on, that relationship does not work.
Yeah, the person that we put on for the program is there to help with the standard operating procedures in the back end and get those process up and started. But it really is the broker's ownership to implement that across his whole business, not just the one person coming in from Belief Media.
Yeah. So how many Platinum guys have we run in the past? Only about 30. But that's 30 people we've taken to, it used to be $100 million a year, but that was really easy for us. We do 120 mil, and I say that because we normally knock it off in about 8 months, 9 months. We try and drag the volume out so they've got consistency, and so we don't put too much pressure on our staff in order to process the business, but we also don't want to not reach that target. So how much does it cost? It varies, and it's a lot.
Yeah, there's no hidden part about that.
No, we charge for it because
we've got a full-time staff member. There is a lot of costs associated with running the program.
There's an enormous cost, but they get it all back, probably 15-fold or so, by way of the volumes, the commissions that are generated, by way of 120 mil, and then the trailing.
And it's guaranteed. I don't know if you mentioned that earlier. Yeah.
It's 100% guaranteed. A lot of people are reluctant to get involved when we initially start the program. But normally that's not the case. The reluctance is only if someone has not been recommended to the program by someone else and so on. But the first 3, we're paid a small retainer throughout the entire 12 months. The rest is paid into escrow. That's an escrow agent determined by you. We've got our own guy, an accountant that runs a program for us. So if you want to use our escrow agent, I'm not even sure what they call themselves these days, then by all means you can use him, but you're well and truly in a position where you can use your own. And after 3 months, you have the option to pull the pin. In fact, you have the option to pull the pin at any point. There are just penalties that might apply. And by penalties, we mean just a payout based on the amount of volume that's been written. So that's determined. That's why it's paid into escrow. So there's a contract there, and we look at the volume that's been written. The only occasion that we came close to pulling the pin in that 12-month period is because the broker got too busy. And he said, I can't be a broker anymore. If this is how hard I'm going to have to work to generate $100 million, I said, mate, we're doing everything for you. All you're doing is talking to the client. And we were managing fine here. And in that 12 months, by the way, we do set up your practices and procedures. We put everything in place around your business. We find a lot of mortgage brokers are drawn towards the industry on the basis of, a fairly predictable income. You don't need much of an entry-level education, 4 days training, and you're a qualified broker. You can go out and potentially make, lots and lots of money. So it attracts all sorts, and occasionally it attracts people who weren't prepared for the extraordinary pressure placed upon them to run their own business. It's a huge burden at times. And lead generation. I talk about this all the time. Lead generation has become a dirty word, and that's why there's a market in the finance space where people buy leads.
Yeah.
Where people buy leads. Jesus Christ. Excuse the blasphemy. It's just a bizarre industry. So we're not selling leads by getting people involved with this program. What we're doing is absolutely just kickstarting their business, and we're putting all the programs in place necessary for you to take the reins. It's not paid lead generation. You have all the digital infrastructure set up and maintained. You have an employee who answers the telephone. You have someone who's following up for all your clients and so on. Anyway, I'm not going to sell you on this program, and I don't need to. And quite frankly, it is invitation only. But I did want to talk about it. We felt we had to, only because we're being asked about it more and more. And the reality is that most people just won't get access to it because it places the burden on us internally. Perhaps in the future we'll ramp it up. But at the moment, there's just no scope for that.
And after the 12 months, the expectation is that you fully take over and maintain that momentum with your own people.
Yeah.
So that's also important. So we need to, when people are invited into the program, we sit down and we make sure that's all very clear, and people really have that burning desire to build a business, not just some additional income. It is a business mindset. That is what we're looking for.
Absolutely, not a lead generation mindset. A lead generation mindset will pay the rent, and a business mindset will buy the building. Yeah, it's a
Nicely
big difference. Yeah, it's a huge difference. People that buy leads, those people that buy leads are never, ever, ever going to have a big business. They need to shift their reality in a different direction. They need to completely refocus. Buying leads is just patently absurd. Right, we've talked about it before. I'm not going to go into it now. It's just absolutely stupid and ridiculous. And then I am going to go into it. And then
I was going to say, should you clarify when you say buying leads that we're not referring to Facebook ads or things like that?
No,
yeah.
this is where
We're
you
talking,
pay someone, $5,000 for 200 leads, or $30 a lead, or $50 a lead. And by the way, I say this, but we used to have, what do we call it? Pay by the leads. It's written on the board. Like if you poked your head around the corner, it was home leads by demand service. But you know what? We charged for each lead we generated. By the way, and each lead we generated was on their website. It was so compliant. It was as if they had put that program together themselves. Like, it was on their website. The landing pages are on their website. The email experience was integrated. The notifications were completely integrated. Everything was white labeled. It is what is essentially made available via our digital marketing and social media platform now. What it didn't come with was our support in building the business and guiding you through building a really big and broad digital footprint that would generate ongoing organic traffic and convert upon the leads in an amazing way that were generated via paid promotion and so on. It was the paid broker growth program was fantastic. It was amazing. It really was. Some of the biggest brokers in Australia right now are our broker growth guys. There are some guys that came on with broker growth and we didn't see the success we wanted. I think every single person that has ever gone through broker growth has probably got their money back in a couple of weeks, right? Because we give them a couple of genuine loans or, leads through our real estate group or something like that. There was one guy, I asked 42 times for a contact list for RBA emails and newsletters and things like that, 42 times and never got it. That kind of person is destined for a life of mediocrity.
He was wondering why things weren't occurring and why things hadn't started to.
Well, not really. He made a ton. Like, he's a rare exception because he actually made a ton of volume out of the programs we introduced, but he wasn't able to build on the basic stuff because he didn't give us things like that. So he's probably, if we had to scale, on satisfaction scale 0 to 10, he's the only guy we've ever dealt with, where I couldn't get him to do a single thing. I think he would have been better served. He's one of those guys that just needs to go out and buy leads because he doesn't give a damn about his business. He really doesn't. That's the way some brokers operate. He was winding down. He didn't want to build up a big business. Some people are like that, man. So where was I going before all of that?
Summing up the platform, the Platinum program.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a digital media and social media platform. So Yabba provides all the tools. It provides all the programs. It provides everything that would otherwise be used by the Platinum guys. The only difference is the Platinum guys have one of our staff members actually implementing these programs on their behalf and putting everything in place very, very quickly. So it's the tools are all made available, the digital media and social media platform. So Yabba provides everything. If you take Yabba yourself and incrementally drip feed some of those modules and some of those programs into your business, you can do $120 million a year as well. It's not hard. $120 million in Sydney is so easy. I say that, people hear it and kind of cringe a little bit and go, well, it's not that easy, I'm doing 25 million this year and everything else. You look at, I won't say his last name, but Justin in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, he wrote 450 million last year or something. That's not hard to do when the average property price out there is $6 million. All right, put him in Bathurst, right? Selling 2-bedroom units for $120,000. He's going to have to sell a whole lot more. But the thing is that the value of the properties is a lot higher. And when all the volume is coming through you, despite the fact you had sort of nothing to do with the deal, and a lot of brokers are like that. They see success, based on the volume, the price of the property, where they're located. One of our brokers about 12 months ago was looking for an office in Liverpool, in the western suburbs of Sydney. And I said, no. I said, because he's a former tennis player, a former competition tennis player, so he's very well connected in certain types of circles. And I said, no, if that's the case, we want Double Bay. I've said that now. Everyone's going to know who he is. Everyone is going to know who he is. But that office, I placed him in that office. I set him up and put all those early programs in place because he's only been in the industry for maybe 2.5 years. And he's now one of the, not as an independent broker, he's obviously not writing the volume, but certainly as a business, they're doing amazing things. And that again is by virtue of the fact that he just fits into Double Bay. You know, culturally, he just sort of fits like, you know, I was going to use a Roy and HG expression there, you know, but I'm not going to. Fits like a something in a something. If you know Roy and HG, you'll appreciate the reference. Now, so 120 million bucks in Sydney is the average property price in most parts of Sydney is around $1 million. So it's not hard to do. It's only 120 loans, 250 odd work days a year for most mortgage brokers. If you can't do one a day, and that's the advantage of our Platinum program, is it does free the brokers up to actually start to develop real relationships themselves and engage in a meaningful way in relationship building programs and going out and seeing property franchise groups and things like that, and immersing themselves in a higher level of business. Anyway, that's that. I said to Don before we shot this video, I said 3 to 5 minutes, man.
Not kidding, you did.
Yeah,
and that was just our intro, 3 to 5 minutes, not even getting into the core of what we were talking about.
Yeah, we got sidetracked, but I'm sure, look, if people watch this far, it means they're kind of interested in what we've got to say. But I know how people react when I say 120 million a year is nothing, right? We can do, there's an office here's another story. It's always interesting. In fact, there are two girls up in, when we ran our Jupiter program in September and October of 2019, right, the biggest volume 8-week period we've had in our history. It's going to be a long time before we do that again, because we ran this program virtually unpaid, right, virtually unpaid, because I got absolutely fed up with the fact that people weren't maintaining their database the way they should be. And everyone said, oh, I haven't got time. Of course they've got time. You know, they've got time for 5 games of golf a week. They've got time to clear their database. They've got time to manage their business. And I remember screaming at them in a client-only video and saying, if you don't have the time to manage your business, maybe you shouldn't have your own business. I really screamed at them. And it's actually on YouTube now. I put up on YouTube a couple of weeks ago because... and I ran this program with Paul, Kate, Sarah, and there was one other person running the program. They're all doing it full time, and a loan came through. A loan was basically being approved, sometimes every 4 minutes. So it was 2.3 billion with a B, so 2.3 billion over the 8 weeks, which represents a massive chunk of the mortgage market in this country. If we had have been an aggregator, we would have been one of the best performing aggregators in the country. But that's because we were just clearing the programs, the databases of what was, I don't know if it was hundreds or just dozens and dozens of brokers that have to go through the books there, but I think it was, well over 100.
Databases and mailing lists are so valuable that you've got to wonder how people can underestimate the worth of them. They're so valuable that I've got a scenario where a speaker, a well-known speaker, was working with an event company, and they wouldn't even release the database to the event speaker, even though it was his clients, because of how valuable these database and mailing lists are. So don't underestimate what value and how much worth they are.
Brokers know it. They're told all the time. Yeah, your database, and I've got a number of rules I apply for brokers. And again, this is one of those rules. Yusuf in Western Sydney, again, that's an uncommon name. Everyone's going to know that. He took a business, an entry-level broker, I think it was after 18 months, took his business to over $300 million. This is a business, multiple offices, and it was 2 brands. Everyone will know who that guy is now on the basis of his name in Western Sydney. Although no, they won't, because there's a guy in Aussie, and I think there's a loan market guy as well that's quite... so no one... Okay, people might have to actually call him up and ask. But, look, he's clearly non-franchise, and he isn't franchise, so again, that narrows it down. But he did that on the basis of a 7-11 rule, right? When he came in, I sat him down, he was green as anything, and I said, look, I said, I told him everything that I say in these videos, and that is, you're going to hear from all the charlatans and thieves and everything, and they're going to try and push you onto Facebook marketing, and they're going to sell you leads for, $5,000 for 100 leads or something stupid. They're going to try and do this. They're going to try and do that. What you need to do is start to build a relationship model yourself. I said, you're going to have the rejections, the old school, if we were to say, I'll tell you another story in just a moment. We're on a roll here. We might as well just rant on, right? But I gave them the 7-Eleven rule, and different people apply different things, 10 before 10, 7-Eleven, and so on. I use 7-Eleven because it's 7-Eleven.
People are so used to saying it now.
I just like the numbers, and that was 7 phone calls before 11 a.m. But they were people you've never spoken to before. It was just an introduction. It was just to learn a bit more about their business, whatever else. And you should reference in the digital marketing social media guide, there's a section there on Saturn. Routinely returns about $450 million a month, not in the last 6 or 7 months for different reasons. But at the moment it's returning maybe 160 to 180, maybe 220, depending on the month. Volume to our brokers every single month. There is one guy in Leichhardt that is based his entire franchise model on the back of Saturn and nothing else. There are relationship-based programs that will kick Facebook's ass. I had to say that and wake you up. But I am sick to death of people just thinking that Facebook is the answer. It's not. There are leads everywhere. There are opportunities everywhere. Like literally everywhere. And people are crying out for help. When we spoke to... there's a podcast we did with Gurgis from Vogue Homes, who's the national sales manager for Vogue Homes. I think they are looking at doing up to 500 builds a year by next year or something. There was a specific number they had, and we deal with Vogue regularly. We deal with Gurgis all the time. And we were here on these couches. And afterwards, I'm not sure if I said this on the podcast or whether I asked him afterwards. And I said, mate, how many, because I am curious, with these big building companies and everything, I want to know how many brokers are actually contacting him. Now, he had one girl who is relatively local come and, sit down with them and talk to them and everything else. So they pass on maybe 10% of the business that walks through the door in Homeworld in Western Sydney onto her, which isn't much business. But I asked him afterwards and said, how often has a mortgage broker contacted your group? How often do you have mortgage broker franchises or even aggregators at the aggregator level? Because aggregators don't seem to give a crap about lead generation there. That's not their core responsibility. They aggregate. It's what they do. I said, how often do you have brokers contact you and sit you down and buy you lunch, as we did, and talk to you about opportunities that might exist there, some JV or relationship that might be beneficial? And he said never.
They had to actually go out and look for someone.
Well, you think about our property guys, right? And we've dealt with one particular mob who have got a couple of hundred, maybe 300 or 400 property guys on the books. I couldn't tell you. And every single one of them is instructed kind of as part of their property. We'll call it a franchise, right? You know who I'm talking about, right? They're told to go out and find a mortgage broker, basically. Now, a mortgage broker should be finding them. And at the moment, that particular group, we're trying to set up a bilateral arrangement where we take on responsibility for their guys, but also pair them up with appropriate brokers. And that's one of a few different programs we've got running. We've got one with accountants, which is just going gangbusters, and another one that's with a property group. It's not quite as gangbusters in terms of volume. It still does. I say that it still generates $220 million a month on the back of that aggregated group, but it's still not as good as the volumes are there. Brokers just have to know how to find it. They have to crack the code. Right? And I don't give a crap. I don't give a shit what people say. When I hear videos, I've saved a couple of videos on my PC that I've heard on Facebook and everything else. They go, Okay, first of all, that everyone says the shiny objects thing. Ignore the shiny objects. I don't know what that means, because Facebook in isolation is a shiny object. SEO in isolation is a shiny object. Everything's a shiny object. If it's not part of a really broader and strategic plan for growth, if you don't have clear KPIs, set out, over the course of 2 or 3 years, and you have a real clear plan in place, then everything is a shiny object. Everything has to have a place. All right, so have a breath.
Just trying to work out where you're heading with this shiny object.
No, that's what I'm okay. That's part of it. I hear that on Facebook. I heard one webinar, and I saved it to my PC where this guy's going, "Don't buy another lunch. Don't do this. Don't go out and play another round of golf. It's all a waste of time. This is the way you generate leads now. Why the f would you invest all your time and effort and energy into Facebook?" And look, we have the most powerful Facebook program in the industry. That's without question. Right? We introduced Facebook to the digital industry in Australia. We introduced Facebook to businesses in Australia when it launched. We've been doing it forever, right? We know how amazing Facebook can be, right? But, God damn it, don't tell people that a lunch is not worth buying. Don't tell people it's not worth going out and buying a real estate or an accountant or a financial advisor or anybody else for that matter. Don't say it's not worth buying them lunch, because you're providing a roadblock in their goddamn business.
You're also going back to one source of leads. You're not spreading it out and having multiple.
No source of lead generation should be ignored. So when you tell people you don't need to go out and buy lunches anymore because you've got your fantastic Facebook fucking funnel, that's not good enough.
Yeah, you're going to come out sooner or later.
I had to look. It makes me mad as hell, because I've seen lunches turn into $1 billion partnership. Right? We've gone out and bought. How many guys have we had lunch with this year? We go and have lunch just because we can. Right? And we chat, and half the time we forget to talk about whatever we kind of meant to talk about.
Oh, it's the last 10 minutes before we
last 10 minutes. And sometimes you'll have lunch and you say, oh, we should probably talk about that at some point. And then we'll end up at the bar. Do you remember that? We did that a little while ago, and then we were at the bar until God knows what time. It's these things work. Business is not like when you have to apply persuasion in a marketing funnel. I'm a big advocate for digital, right? We do it better than anybody, but digital media is amazing when it's applied correctly. But business is still about people, especially the mortgage industry. It's a relationship-based business, so don't diminish the value of actual relationships with real people. And that's what I see on Facebook. That's the way it's sold.
Even talking, how difficult is it these days to actually talk to someone? They start SMSing you, and by the time you've SMSed back and forth, you could have resolved it in a 30-second phone call. Yet that conversation's gone on for, an hour by the time people get back to you.
For a digital media company, we call everyone all the time.
Yeah.
We're on the phone constantly with people. That's the way we run our business. But we also, for our clients, when we run our premium programs and everything else, when we have high-value clients that are connected with some of our, this is high-value real estate or broker or financial planning or account clients, whatever, and they're part of this network that we've created amongst a group of our guys, we'll go out all the time, because we're the gel, that joins this whole thing together a lot of the time. And there's a measure of quality assurance, by the way. We talk about the Magic Lantern model, right? Know, like, trust. When our property clients and our broker clients get together, and we always go to a meeting, go to a lunch or something with them together, just to have a chat. We're not promising anything. We're just sort of seeing, what the dynamics are and so on. Where was I headed? What were we talking about?
The real estate, the brokers, but also the accountants. We also bring them together. So we go out.
But there was a point to it.
Oh, it's relationships. How important relationships are in talking, like we call it. We up on the phone, we actually talk to people.
Oh, we're saying the know, like, trust. I was relating it back to the digital model. And you're right. You are absolutely right. But that we jump that know and like model very, very quickly. And the trust is there. We were actually working backwards. It's where, Frank Dukesmith's weighted model, remember we introduced that as part of the sales funnel in 1903, the salesman series. So, because AIDA is a step towards resolution as well. We talk about attention, interest, desire, and action. That applies with relationships, in a sense. And Frank Dukesmith's model works better in that sense, attention, interest, desire, conviction, but it's a weighted model on scales. The point is that we're jumping that trust. The trust is there. I trust, that you're introducing me to the right people, but I'd like to meet them. And that's where you get to know people, and hopefully that's a given. When you're out to lunch, you get to know someone, right? Even if it's short term. The like part is where we try and make that happen. We won't pair one person up with another person if we know that their personalities are not compatible. And most of the time we get people together and they work really, really well together. You think some of the amazing relationships that we've forged, which now we don't do. We used to do all the time with our Mastermind group, which is for our older growth program, a bunch of people that subscribe to a different program to we call it basic platform access. But they subscribe to a different program, so we had to migrate them into a separate and dedicated tier. So that's the Mastermind level, but certainly the Platinum group, we will set up their relationships. But brokers are absolutely in a position to do it themselves anyhow.
And before we go on there, that introducing people to each other, it's been done for so long now. We've actually had large groups come to us and actually request brokers that fit a very specific criteria. And that criteria is normally based on the growth clients and what we expect of them. Yeah.
One of the largest accountancy groups in Australia at the moment, listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, is working with a group of our brokers now. And I had to hand the program back to them because they had their own internal brokerage program. Again, it identifies the business perhaps, which didn't work out for them because it compromised on their accounting business. So they said, okay, let's fall back on me. I worked with their business when they were, a single office on top of a kebab shop, basically in Belfield or something. So the CEO contacted me and said, "What can you do? You're working with mortgage brokers. What can you do?" And I said, "Well, we can do a lot of things, but at the moment, time is going to be pressing." So I basically packaged those brokers up, sent them to him, and that's working really, 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 really well, amazingly well, tremendously well. That's the program I was talking about before. Now, in the last 5 days, 3 days ago, another property group called me and said, and I need to let our clients know because they want to meet on the yacht on Saturday, this Saturday, which is 3 days away. And they're going to fly them up in a private jet. If they're in Victoria, the yacht's in Sydney, so they're going to have a lunch or something. And he said up to 10. Now, initially, remember I said there's only room for 10? I was thinking it was a dinner table. It's because there's sleeping for 10 on the yacht. And I didn't know that.
No, you hadn't told me that one.
I was putting this loose kind of story together based on talking to Rachel, his PA, and I said, okay, 10, all right. And I did think for a minute, maybe that's because of limitations on the aircraft flying out of Victoria, and I don't know how coronavirus is going to impact on that and everything. All these questions popped into my head.
And it came back to the yacht.
It came back to sleeping on the yacht, and I said, well, there are a bunch of guys in Sydney that meet the criteria. And by the way, he's one of my early clients, right? So he's received every email, and he reads every email as well because I check. Which is a funny thing to do, I guess. But he understands the importance of things like content generation. So his criteria, do you remember what the one piece of content generation was, that one content generation criteria?
There was one where they wanted at least 3 videos a week.
3 videos a week?
Yeah. And Now, who actually does that? There's very, very few.
And I said, how about 3 a month? Because he's limiting himself. Because the guys that are doing 3 videos a week, sure, they're doing great with SEO and everything else, but they're not necessarily the best fit for his operation. So, I'll still send that criteria out to our guys, because a lot of people still meet that. I went and had a look through, and there are a bunch of guys there but we're not going to get 10. All right, unfortunately, even with the large number of people in our books, we're still not going to get 10. So
and look, that alone, that's a couple of people now that have come to us and said, brokers who are generating content. It just shows how important it is to any large business that the people are business minded. If they're not out there generating content, writing articles, anything that shows expertise, they weren't even interested in talking to them.
That's right. It's really, look, in this case, I think it's because, he and I have, he's built his business on the top of, a whole bunch of lunches we had at McDonald's Enfield in Sydney.
McDonald's.
That was our meeting place. So we'd meet up there all the time, and that's where we'd run through the growth programs and everything else. And since then they've obviously got very big. But he reads all our emails. He knows how much he watches our videos. I scream at people. Unfortunately, I get really emotional because I don't think emotional is the word. I think passionate is the word, because I started to get really pissed before when we were talking about the nature of what was it? Yeah, when Facebook guys diminish the value of traditional marketing because they're trying to assign value to their absolute BS, and at some point in the future, I'm gonna just come out and say this program, absolute pure garbage. I'm gonna spill out and talk about all the brokers we've inherited that have done those programs, and despite the fact they've done them and hated them, they still gave these bozos 5 stars on Google, reviews, because they were asked to do it because I'll give you a branded book, or I'll give you this or that or anything else. And by the way, we're the opposite. We don't want reviews. We tell people, do not give us a review, because it discloses who they are for privacy purposes.
And we do touch upon it in our rescue package podcast.
We do. But for crying out loud, guys, mortgage broking is a relationship-based business, and a relationship-based business is predicated upon relationships. If you don't have relationships, you don't have a business. That's relationships with your customers, relationships with your prospects, relationships with your partners, introducers, and so on. Now, we are going to do a podcast at some point. There's one on the board there on referrals. In fact, I think it was number 9. Is the next one we've got scheduled is on managed content, where we talk about our RBA program, newsletter program, social media program, article submission program, and the satellites website program. A whole bunch of programs we've got in place, because when brokers invest in our digital video and social media platform, Yabba, I'm going to start saying Yabba. When people invest in Yabba, they're investing in a marketing suite. It's just not online digital lead generation. That would be reckless and careless. Any marketing company, which is every marketing company in the finance space that provides you with nothing other than goddamn lead pages and ClickFunnels, Kartra, all that sort of horse shit, is objectively failing you. Now, in that sense, we failed some of our guys in the past as well. In that, we didn't provide as many white label tools as I would have liked. And that's why the platform is the perfect mechanism upon which to deploy that, because it's, I shouldn't say we failed, guys. They failed us in their content generation strategy, because no one does as many videos as we would like them to. No one writes as many articles as we would like them to. No one does any of that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. And that's why, again, we had to retire the growth program, despite the fact that it was a machine that just churned out amazing brokers, assuming they followed the blueprint, which a lot of guys did not. We were talking earlier on this afternoon about guys would call me every single day for 2 years. Every single day. But I'd ask them to do something or ask them how much they had done in certain areas and nothing had been done. Yeah, that bothered me. So if I'm going to work with someone one-on-one, certainly on the platinum level, I need to know that that they are part of our team and we're part of theirs. I don't want it to be this one-way relationship. So that, it'll come full circle. That's how I like the platinum program, to run.
And the growth program will be reinstated, but at a time to be determined.
Well, will it?
It gives you it fills in that nice gap between the platform and platinum. So, but it comes back to how much commitment we put towards the platinum program. It's
the platinum program I'm only doing because and honestly the reason that I'm going to kick it in the guts again is because we've got real estate guys and so on that we pair up with brokers that aren't part of a mastermind or a platinum program because we have no one else to give them to. So we've got all these accountants and financial advisors and more coming in every day, certainly as the other platform becomes more widely used within those groups as well. Those people become known to us and we become known to them, and they come to us and say, have you got a mortgage broker? Or just the same way a mortgage broker will come to us and say, do you know a financial advisor? So all these people are interconnected in some way, and I think a lot of people like to fall back on us or rely on us to facilitate those connections. But look, the platinum program is being run because there's a surplus of businesses that at the moment, we're passing on to, beta subscribers to Yabba, and it's if someone's paying a couple of $100 a month access, or thereabouts, for access to a digital marketing suite, and then we give them a relationship worth $30 million a year in volume. And that's the other thing. Like with Dee, who we were talking about before, and it was a nice email to read, and we did talk about this in another email a short time ago, where he was always a good guy. We needed to pass work on to Dee. He's a mastermind group guy, and we've elevated some of his programs into the platinum space where it's managed directly by us. But when we said, I remember calling him. I was standing right here because I needed to get phone reception, and it wouldn't work anywhere else in the office. I was standing just behind Domenico to his right, off his right shoulder, and I said, look, mate, we want to get you involved in this program. We've got a backlog of leads right now, and having a backlog of the leads is not good because you want to contact the lead within, 3 minutes of that lead popping through into your CRM or planner or SMS or whatever else. And unfortunately, I hadn't been on top of this lead collection. It was one of our clients who we manage, and he gave me 75 leads or something. Anyway, I called Dee and said, mate, I want to know if you've got the capacity to take on this business. And he said, sure, mate, sure. He said, how many leads are you looking at passing on now? What's your little backlog? And I said, 75 leads. And he laughed his head off at me. He laughed and laughed and laughed. And here I was thinking, what did I say that was funny? It wasn't like a punchline. And then it occurred to me that not many brokers come across a situation where they're just hand-delivered with 75 people ready to go now.
And someone apologised and saying, sorry, I need to give you 75
leads.
And
the thing was, a lot of them were first-home buyers, so a lot of them will stick in his pipeline and they'll be there. When they're ready to buy, they'll use him as a broker. See, if someone is developed by or attracted to a real estate group or a property advisory or something like that, that's one thing. They get passed on to a mortgage broker. The property guy may not be able to provide them with the appropriate property, but the broker always maintains his relationship with that client. So the broker usually ends up writing that deal. So if they have a good pre-settlement or pre-loan, pre-application system in place. They implement a good edge or reminder system. There's a whole bunch of little systems that can be used to maintain contact with these people whilst they're looking for a property. Then he'll still get the deal. The property guy may not. So he probably thought that was the end of it, and it turned into another. Yeah, for a guy that has, I think I said he had about 1,200 on his database or thereabouts, I think, and then he's getting now about 100 leads a month. Now, not all of those are converting, because a lot of them are first-time buyers. A lot of them don't qualify just yet. A lot of them need to be nurtured. A lot of them are buying house and land, and the land isn't going to be registered for another 4 to 6 months and all that sort of stuff. But he did do, 4 or 5 in the last couple of weeks. He said he's got another couple next month or something. So they're starting to drip feed now. It's been probably a difficult 8 weeks for him, 12 weeks, whilst all these people have found their property and everything else, and now they're starting to push through the pipeline on the other end, which is obviously where he wants them. But he's a Mastermind group member. He's not a platinum guy. Now, I did say to him, "What is your expected volume?" And he gave me a figure, and I said, "Mate, we can double that, And I think he will."
He even made the comment that he's heard many people promise leads and so much work through referrals, and so he just took 10% of whatever number it was and assumed that's what would come through, or 15% or something. Anyhow, a very low part of it.
Yeah.
And then was shocked when the whole lot was delivered.
That's what I was alluding to before, but just sort of got sidetracked. He did say, he said, "To be honest," I remember seeing in the email, "To be honest, I'm just a little bit overwhelmed by it." And I think I think that email's written in an apologetic way. Like, "I'm sorry, guys, I'm busy. I'm not, getting back to the leads and back. I'm struggling." But it was perfectly acceptable. That's how relationships work. This guy was saying, "I've got to put on some extra personnel." Great. He's
improving
he's improving upon his processes. Yep. He's doing what needs to be done. And we all sort of sat around that evening down here at Watsy and said, "Yeah, it's great. Like, he's doing a fantastic job, and people like him. He takes a really good approach to his video conferencing and so on. So people really people trust him. He's a very trustworthy guy. He's very, very knowledgeable. He does help people with higher risk loans and so on. So it's working really well in that respect."
And we'll get him in and have a chat to him. We'll include him on a podcast.
Yeah, well, he is going to do a podcast with us by telephone. He's in Victoria, which is the other thing. The real estate group is in Sydney. He's in Victoria. But it still works. And I think he's been assigned a Sydney number through the telco system anyhow. He actually has an email now with the other real estate group. So they've assigned him with an email. So he inherits a certain degree of the branding, but has his own details within the footer, operating under ACL and so on. And by the way, this arrangement only took place because he had an ACL. I don't think we would have been able to manage it legally if he did not have that ACL, but he does. So that's where really, and that sort of thing repeats itself over and over and over and over and over again. And I bring up his story because I know when we talk to him, it's exactly what he will say. When he came to me, I could tell in his voice that he was struggling. He was at a point where he's probably considering his future in the industry. Like I could hear it. And he was sitting on a gold mine and just didn't know it. And that's what prompted. It was my experience with him is what prompted me to run the internal Jupiter program. So I put on, an extra 3 people, and $2.3 billion later across the board. I think he did an extra, maybe, 50 mil or something. Look, I couldn't even tell you what it was over that 8 weeks. He did well, but even if he did next to nothing, and there were people that didn't convert anything. All right, and that's the thing. There were people with databases of 300 people where we made 80 bookings for them, and they didn't convert a single one. And that all came down to mindset. One guy in particular comes to mind who said to me afterwards, he said, I'm a mortgage advisor. I'm a finance advisor or mortgage advisor. I'm not a mortgage broker. And he was hiding behind his title. He really was. He was afraid to talk to people. Well, that's fine. So he's hiding behind his title and saying, when people are ready to talk, they'll come to me. No, they won't. When people are ready to talk, if you're not talking to them, they won't remember who you are and they'll go to someone else. Which is what we found in his database. It was this person after person after person that had gone somewhere else.
Yeah, he was educating them and then letting them go.
He was educating them and they're not giving a crap. So look, the mortgage industry attracts all types. Some people are better at talking to clients than others, but certainly if you're good over the phone, wow. Losing my voice now. So anyway, this 5-minute podcast should come to an end now. This all started, I've got that underlined there, that 120 mil with the fact that a lot of people do cringe. And I started on eastern suburbs and all that sort of stuff. But the point is 120 mil is only 120 loans. Average property price in Sydney. If you're in Concord, my origins are in Concord. So I grew up in Concord and lived there for a long time. The average property price out there now is 1.8 mil. All of a sudden, the number of loans you have to write to reach that volume is halved, almost halved.
Just over one a week.
Yeah, it's just over one a week. When I had a brokerage out there, we used to put 250 people. This is in Concord. We used to put 250 people into Concord RSL, into a room in Concord RSL. We used to get a speaker out like Wayne Pearce. He used to be like an attraction. They used to attract a whole bunch of people out. And as long as you got everyone's details there in the room, you could quite easily convert, 60 or 70 of them over the next few months. You had 250 people there in the room, and that brings me back to the relationship stuff. I was dealing with a broker reasonably recently. I know we've gone well and truly over time, but I'll tell this story anyhow. I was talking to a broker, and he was telling me about how he's a very community-oriented broker and how he does this for the community and that for the community, and he was telling me he's part of the Rotary group and all sorts of weird stuff. And I said, okay, so, and that's great. By the way, I am a big advocate. If you're a member of even Toastmasters or BNI or Rotary or any kind of group where people get together, that is fantastic. But as long as it provides value. If you're a passive member of that group and you sit in the back of the room and pick your nose, you're not going to achieve anything. And again, I know when I was screaming before, that was people belittling a lunch. Don't understand the industry. And I'm going to play this video one day. It's kind of de-identified. I'm not going to say who it is or anything, but I need people to understand how this message is being pushed out to the industry in order to, again, assign value to the digital media processes when, and again, despite the fact we provide, well and truly, the leading digital experience in the country, certainly the industry, we don't walk away from grassroots marketing. It's so easy to do well now with relationship-based marketing because a lot of brokers do rely just on, that pedestrian, what they consider to be lead generation stuff. And by the way, over 90% of people looking for a home loan go to Google. We talked about this with SEO, right? Over 90%. So people looking for you, and if you can't be found, then you don't exist, right? So it's obviously more affordable to make an effort with the content generation strategy and attract 25, 35, 45 sometimes organic leads every single month or week. We see brokers doing 30 to 40 organic leads a week, of which, 25% might be fantastic high volume stuff. There's a lot of people who want to refinance their car. It's a mixed bag online. You get all sorts. But the point is that you get that traffic, and it's certainly more productive in value and cost efficient. Provides a better ROI and a conversion than what you would expect from digital. That's not to say digital isn't, it's not to say it doesn't have its place, because it absolutely does. Obviously, You know,
And there's-
putting all these disclaimers in place before I get to the point, because I need to. And unfortunately, when you do that, when you go through these, you know, we need to do this, you're sort of covering all your bases, you forget what the point was that you had when you started, particularly when you're tired.
And you're talking about the website there. If you do a search for a mortgage broker in your local area and you're not appearing on that first page, you've really got to wonder what's going on, and you need to have a chat with anyone to get yourself up in there, get your website visible.
Yeah. Anyway, that's where I started. This was with Tyrone, who I don't think you have met. No, Tyrone or Tyson, one of the two. And he was telling me about how he's a member of the Rotary group and everything. He wears a bow tie again. Oh, gee, that's again. All of a sudden, people go, "Oh, bow tie Tyrone," you know, and which I thought was real. And I give him grief every time I see him. By the way, so don't think I'm speaking out of school here, because I pick on him all the time. He loves it. He wears it because this is actually kind of clever. He says it. He said it's my fault, because I always give brokers grief for being a big sea of blue and black suits. I say it's a sea of blue suits. There's no point of differentiation. Of differentiation. No one's positioning as they should. No one's setting themselves apart. And I gave this presentation to a group of about 40 brokers, and he was there in the room. And he was listening to that, and he looked around the room, he said, and he saw a sea of blue suits, as I did standing up the front, you know, behind the podium. And he said that was a turning point. He said, from now on, he said, I'm going to wear a colourful bow tie every single time. He said, occasionally wear suspenders. And he said, because people remember me. I said, that's kind of clever. Like, he said, it's not my personality. That's not what I do, but people never forget me. I'll never forget years and years ago when I worked with an Irish guy. It's in the early days of my aviation career, and he said the only reason I've done well in aviation is because I've got an Irish accent. People expect me to be funny and tell jokes. He said, anyway, this guy with the bow tie, that was his point of difference. He was positioning himself in a bizarre way, his appearance. Yeah, and it has worked for him. But it was him that I said to when he said, I'm in the Rotary group, I'm in this group, I'm in that group, I'm in the local golf club, I'm the vice president of this. I said, but what does it return for you? It's great, you know, that you're doing all these things, you're building these bridges and forging relationships and so on, but what volume is it returning to you? And he said, well, not much really. And he went through and he tried to explain what deals might happen and, you know, everything. I said, okay, that's the problem. He said, if you're going to go into these groups with the purpose of actually building your business, you want to make sure you actually have a proper strategy in place to make that happen. So I said, okay, you said you're a community-based broker. You focus on your community and so on and so on and so on. I said, you live in a house? He goes, yes. I said, but you live in a house with like 65 houses or something, probably 70 houses. It was quite a long street. He said, yes. And I said, how many of your neighbours know your name? You're a community-based broker. How many of your direct neighbours know exactly who you are and what you do for a living? And I don't know. I said, well, it's time to find out. So the two of us went out together, and he was working from home, and he said, okay, I'm going to be working from, he introduced himself to everyone in that street and said, I'm working from home now. I'm moving my business to my home. I just want to let you know I'm working down at number 27 or whatever it was. And, you know, if there's anything I can do for you, I'm always home because I work there. He said, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. You know, I'm always available. If you need a mortgage broker, if you're looking to, and he'd get in these discussions with people about their home. They trusted him. He lives half a dozen doors down. And I don't remember the number of loans that came of that, but of that single street, which was, 70 odd homes, it was like 10. It was I should go back through my records and maybe give him a call and write something about that, because it's a unique expression of how valuable those really if you're a community-based broker and you call yourself a community-based broker, you better act as though you're a community-based broker, and that starts from home. We exaggerated the story. We said I've moved in. The fact is he was there for a little while, but it worked. On the same
Very
things.
well, if you're talking about 10 people writing loans.
It was mammoth.
Extremely well.
It was huge, and there could have been more than 75 homes. It might have been 80 or something. It was very, very high. Very young families, everyone looking to save a little bit of money, but big, beautiful homes and all that sort of stuff. They weren't cheap, and we started to develop his relationships with those organisations that he was part of, including Rotary and so on. And I think it was me that said to him, I went along to one of his Rotary meetings once. I said, the average age here is about 135. All right? You're better off owning a funeral home or something. You don't want to be a mortgage broker. This is not going to work the way you want it to. But we've done that before. Do you remember? I dragged you along to one of our clients. There is only so much I can do with clients, right? There's only so much I can provide them, so much assistance and guidance when it comes to things like presentation on video, talking and just talking shit the way we are. So I took him to Toastmasters, and that I didn't really think of as being a place where he's going to convert anybody, but everyone likes him. He gets along with people. It's just when you stick him in front of a camera, he turns to crap. But he came really close pre-pandemic because I don't know if you remember, we were there the week before
a breakup.
Yeah. I remember we were in a Chinese restaurant. I said, no, I can't. And they said, that's racist. And I said, no, I'm just, I just don't want to be in a Chinese restaurant. We don't know if these people are living with a family of Chinese people who just got back from China. And all these things, went through my mind. And then 2 or 3 days later, it was that the state basically shut down. And that put an end to Toastmasters. And I won't go back because it's Toastmasters. But organisations like BNI, he went to a BNI meeting, which is more suited to someone, this is 12 months on or, 8 months, 9 months on, where he's more suited to, where he's improved upon those things we're looking to improve early on in the year. So he's developed in that sense, he's matured in amazing ways. And now he's going to these groups where he really can network properly, and he's actually having some success with that. Now, for the sake of a 6:30 a.m. breakfast with a bunch of amazing professional guys, I don't spend, personally, I'm thinking of going to a BNI meeting, right? Only because I don't spend much time around grown-ups. Yeah, 4 hours ago, I was making snowmen with mashed potato, and I was putting carrots in mashed potato to make it look like a little snowman. And I sat back and thought, man, this is, as much as I'm enjoying this, and it really was fun, said I probably need to hang around grown-ups a little bit more, and you don't count.
I was going to make a comment along those lines.
But you know what it's like when you got little kids, that kind of becomes your life. And my wife has it worse than I do. At least I get to deal with people like you and some of our clients every day. My wife doesn't necessarily have that. So BNI is good, and from a professional point of view, if you want to run a professional business, it stands to reason you're going to associate yourself with professional and like-minded people. And you get that, I think, in BNI. It's a really high-level group of people, a group of motivated people. I don't know how successful they are, and I know there are some really successful people there, but certainly they're motivated, and that's what you need. Certainly when you're at a breakfast, I don't know why they do these things at 6:30 in the morning, but
Start of the business day.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, 7 before 11.
Yeah, I was scrolling through. Funnily enough, after this whole BNI thing, because it's been on the radar for a couple of weeks now, and yesterday I was scrolling through LinkedIn for the first time in a long time, only because we're testing some features of the social aspects of our platform, and I came across a couple of guys that were part of the BNI group in Parramatta, and I thought you and I should go to that. Just to drag ourselves out of the office and everything else and evaluate the experience for our mortgage brokers. So when they come to us and say, is BNI a worthwhile group to be involved with, we can answer with some measure of authority.
Yeah, having experienced it personally rather than hearing it from others, yes, definitely.
That's right. Anyway, look, this podcast has... It's not actually a podcast, right? It's just a throwaway video. We're going to do 3 to 5 minutes, and it's turned into this big long rant. So I do apologise for that, guys. We are just making tons of video at the moment for no good reason sometimes. Well, everything has a reason. We've got some very formalised and structured podcasts we're going to release. But we needed to record this one just because we wanted to run through the Platinum program, because I am asked constantly whether I'm running it and whether spots are available. So the short answer to a big question is, if we don't invite you into the Platinum program, invite you in for evaluation to sort of discuss it, after you have registered interest, so you always have to register your interest first. We're not going to call you and say, do you want to pay us a shit ton of money this year to run your business? That is not how it works. We wait for people to express interest, and then we'll talk to you after that, if and when a spot becomes available. And I hate to sound, like it's this regal experience or anything, but it is reasonably selective in that we really have to work with those brokers that have the most capacity to handle the volume that we do provide them. Given that we do all the back end stuff, we still need brokers that are motivated and capable to do all the broker stuff that they do. So thanks for listening, guys. Really didn't mean to talk this long, but there are probably a few good points that may have come from our chat, maybe.
Oh, no, look, there was all important points. If you're looking at and you've got an interest in the Platinum program, look, we give plenty of examples of what will be involved. The stories you mentioned give an idea of the amount of involvement and the amount of work that will be involved. But you will walk out with a very highly streamlined and successful business. And we also give plenty of examples there where it didn't work out because people just weren't able to commit the time to it. So
there weren't plenty of examples where it didn't work out. I said there's one case in 24 years of working with mortgage brokers. I've had one case where a mortgage broker was just I don't know why he came to us, because he's the guy I asked 42 times. I can't let go of that 42 times for a contact list so we can send out a group to his clients, when he had well and truly, thousands of people, I believe a couple of thousand people on his list, and he ignored those people. Now I see that as professional neglect. And the legislation now does. If you go back through our articles on our website, we've always talked about a best interest duty. We've always talked about the obligation brokers have to their clients, in terms of providing the best loan, the best product, the best outcomes for their client, but also in the post-settlement phase. We've always argued, particularly pre-roll commission, when the issue of trail was being debated, should trail exist and so on and so on. Of course it should, right? Because it's a deferred up front, which people tend to forget, because back in the early days it was paid up front and that was that. And then the banks, because they were being greedy, said, how about we pay up front then defer it? And I don't understand the full backstory to that, but I'm sure there's some sort of benefit. There wouldn't be a benefit unless there was a benefit to the banks, because it's a pain in the ass for the aggregators to go through all the bank codes, because they do it manually. A lot of them do it manually. This is big aggregators do it manually, and then sit there with a calculator and determine the commission or the split that needs to be paid. Like, it's very antiquated. The system is still old. It's running on Steam, right? It's crazy. Anyway, so we've been saying for years and years and years that brokers have to have a post-settlement program. They have to nurture their people to the point where they have to be segregated to product. or type of product, St. George fixed, St. George variable, St. George this, St. George that. And then it becomes very difficult to maintain those groups. Occasionally you can group them together, so send one email out to everybody and talk about all the changes that pertain to those products, but at least they're segregated in a manner that makes sense to your, I guess, post-settlement business outcomes. So, where was I headed with that?
No idea. I was mentioning there was some examples where it didn't work out, but I was referring more to people outside.
And
the
I was talking about the
Mastermind
database. So to not make contact with 1,000 people, I saw that as professional neglect for that reason. Right, I really did. If you have blatantly ignored over 1,000 people on your database, that's 1,000 people you've let down. So
and in a lot of cases, you promise that you'll review the loans and keep them up to date.
This broker, I did review his old website where it said, every broker in the country, if you go to their websites, their point of difference is all the same, right? You know what it is? Okay, lower rates, excellent service, and what else?
Specific advice, tailored advice.
Tailored advice, that's the one. It's always those three in various forms. Now, quite frankly, most brokers are full of absolute crap. And by the way, that's not a point of differentiation. That's just a professional obligation, like the most base level professional obligation. It's important to put on your website so I guess people see it and it looks all fancy pants and everything else, but it doesn't mean shit if you're not actually providing the service that is expected of you. So you can't say industry-leading customer service or fantastic customer outcomes, all that sort of stuff if you... Fatigue just kicked in, and my brain went blank.
Customer after the loan's been
that's right.
settled.
So it means nothing if you just write alone and forget about them. And look, quite frankly, our Edge post settlement program is very much we call it clawback insurance, because in the time for those businesses that use it religiously, there has never been there have been clawbacks, but never been a clawback that isn't related to things like payouts from insurance or inheritances and things like that. Not one for those people that use it religiously. Those people that use it haphazardly have seen the occasional clawback, but there's always a reason for it. And you go, when was the last time you contacted him? 3 months after the loan was written, because Edge is broken up into two components. It's the first 100 days and everything else up to 3 years. The first 100 days, you're going to contact them at least 4 times in that period. This is post-settlement, at least 4 times, which is obviously, settlement and then first payment, second payment, third payment, and with a referral-based phone call. So part of the post-settlement program is developing people into referrers and advocates, and that means, testimonials, referrals, all that sort of stuff. So that first 100 days is quite busy.
It's a very defined step. So it's not guesswork. It's defined actions and triggers along the way.
But everything after that, so everything after the 100 days is defined on the basis of the type of interaction. Was it an investment product? Was it a first home product? Was it a refinance product? So on. If you've got, knowing that the average life of a vehicle, by the way, if someone does vehicle finance with you, you're not going to call them every, 6 months to see how the car is going. They will be on your list. You'll be developing them, because vehicle owners develop into property owners if they're not already property owners. But if they're 20 years old and they buy their first little hatchback, they're going to be a property owner in a couple of years. So it is worthwhile keeping in contact with these people. It is worthwhile, if you finance a vehicle, calling them and just making sure, that loan is still working for you. I do want to have a look at it and make sure it's, still the best fit, all that sort of stuff. All that sort of stuff still works. But the purpose is developing them into a property client and be an advocate, so a referrer of some description. Right, you look after them, they'll still talk about you. We are going to run a podcast on the post-settlement program and the referral system, so keep an eye out for that one, because it's really interesting. The post-settlement programs routinely generate $400 million a month for our clients. That's on the back of nothing but referrals and managed use of an edge program. So we can attribute that volume to that program. It's very difficult to say with a degree of certainty exactly how much. We can say, with a relatively accurate, degree of certainty that it's between 350 and 420 mil. We know that. The last system we actually used to measure when people had the integrated systems in the last platform, the last version of the platform, we could tell when we pulled it down, when it wasn't heavily trafficked the way it is now, because now it does routinely $400 million a year. Before that, we know it did 9.8 billion over its life. Right, again, it will return. A good referral program will return more than Facebook. In fact, it can return more than organic web traffic. It can return more than referrals and introducers and everything else. Referral networks can grow in size exponentially. It's like a nuclear bomb. You ever dropped a ping pong ball into a fish tank full of mousetraps? No, the mousetraps go off pretty quick. It's like that's an atomic bomb. It's a demonstration used to show how the atoms split outwards. And anyway, guys, look, I'm sorry to keep you for this long. It has. I hope you've gotten something out of it. If you've listened to this, I hope you've gotten something out of it. 1300 235 433 is our telephone number. That's 1300 Belief. That's 1300 235 433, and our website is www.beliefmedia.com.au. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.